The dog wouldn't eat until 5:45. It took me 3 months to understand why. I hadn't wanted him. I want to be honest about that from the start. Because everything that came after only means something if you know I didn't choose this. My sister did, calling from 2 states away to say the shelter was full again, and she'd seen my name on a list of people who technically still had a fenced yard and technically still lived alone. Just for a few weeks, she said, just until they find him a real home. He came off the intake sheet as a golden retriever mix, approximately 6, one ear that never stood upright, a puckered scar along his left side that the vet tech didn't ask about, and I didn't either. He didn't wag much. He didn't do anything much the first few weeks. Ate when I put food down, slept in the laundry room instead of anywhere I'd have picked for him, watched me with an attention that felt less like affection and more like surveillance. I microwaved something for dinner that first week, standing at the counter the way I always did, and caught the clock out of the corner of my eye. 5:45. I didn't think anything of it. Clocks say all kinds of numbers. My wife had been gone 14 months by then. I hadn't moved her chair from the kitchen table. I hadn't opened her side of the closet except twice, both times by accident, both times closing it again faster than I'd opened it. I ate standing up most nights, which is a strange thing to notice about yourself. That you've quietly decided sitting down at your own table is a kind of admission you're not ready to make. A few days later, I was driving back from the pet store, dog food in the passenger seat, and glanced at the dashboard clock at a red light for no reason at all. 5:45. I remember thinking distantly that I seemed to keep catching that number lately. And then the light changed, and I'd stopped thinking about it entirely. It was my sister visiting that weekend who noticed the thing that actually mattered. "He does this every day?" she asked, watching him abandon a half-eaten bowl of food and trot to the front door. He sat. He didn't bark, didn't scratch. He just watched the door with his ears up, the good one all the way, the bad one doing its best, and waited. He'd stay like that until it got dark, sometimes later, then give it up all at once and go lie down without finishing his dinner. I decided it was a fixable problem, the way I decide most things are fixable problems, which is usually a way of avoiding the possibility that they aren't. I started with the Hendersons 2 doors down, mostly because Mrs. Henderson had lived on this street longer than anyone and seemed to know something about everyone. She didn't recognize him. "Never seen that dog before you had him," she said. And that was that. Next, I tried taking him to my sister's place at that hour, thinking maybe it was something about my house specifically. A smell, a sound, a slant of light through a particular window. He spent the entire visit pacing her hallway, scratching lightly at her front door, refusing to settle no matter what either of us tried, as if the problem had simply packed itself into the car with him. I moved his dinner up to 5 o'clock, hoping hunger might override whatever this was. He looked at the food, looked at the door, and chose the door, ignoring the bowl entirely until well past 6, by which point he ate like he hadn't eaten in days. Then I tried leaving the front door standing wide open at 5:40, thinking maybe if he could actually see the empty street, whatever he was watching for, he'd understand faster that it wasn't coming. He didn't wander out onto the porch, even though nothing was stopping him. He just sat exactly at the threshold, perfectly still, staring out at a street with nothing on it for over an hour. That was the day I lost my patience with him. "It's a door," I said, sharper than I meant to. "Nobody's coming." He flinched at my tone in a way that made me feel worse than I expected to. And I stood there in my own hallway thinking that I had become a person capable of raising his voice at a dog who had done nothing except grieve, on a schedule neither of us understood yet. I called the shelter the following week, telling myself it was about the paperwork. I ended up talking to the woman who'd done his intake, and somewhere in the conversation I asked, almost as an afterthought, whether they knew anything about where he'd come from. They did, as it turned out. Not everything. Enough. His previous owner had lived alone, 2 towns over, worked a shift that let out at 5:30, and had walked through his own front door at 5:45 for 11 years running. The dog waited at that door every one of those afternoons, rain or shine, a small ritual neither man nor dog had ever needed to discuss out loud. Then one Tuesday, 5:45 came and went, and so did 6 and 7. He'd collapsed on his drive home, a stroke, gone before anyone found him 2 days later. When they finally got into the house, the dog was still at the door. He'd stopped eating almost entirely by then. It took animal control the better part of a week to coax him away from that spot. We ended up with a box of his things nobody claimed, she added, almost apologetically. Family didn't want most of it. There's a tablet in there if you want it. Has one of those video doorbell apps still signed in. Nobody on staff knew what to do with a dead man's cloud account, so it's just been sitting in the back. I don't fully know why I said yes. I found the clip that night. After 3 loading screens and a login, I didn't have to guess, because someone had written it on a sticky note taped to the case. There was a folder of saved recordings, mostly motion-triggered nothing. A mail carrier, a cat, wind moving a bush. I almost closed it. Then I saw one time-stamped a little over a year back, and I don't know what made me open that one instead of any other. 5 seconds of silence. A porch. Then the door opens from the inside, and a man, ordinary, tired-looking work bag over one shoulder, steps out just as the dog comes barreling around the corner of the frame, full speed. The man crouches without hesitation, like his knees already knew the routine, and the dog plants both front paws on his thighs. No sound worth mentioning. No dialogue. Just a man laughing silently at something only the 2 of them understood. One hand scratching behind an ear that, even then, never quite stood all the way up. 8 seconds, maybe 9. Then the clip ended, and the app dropped back to a loading spinner, and that was it. No more of him anywhere in the folder. Just that one afternoon, saved by accident. By a motion sensor that had no idea it was recording the last ordinary version of somebody's whole life. I sat with the tablet dark in my lap for a long time after that, in the particular quiet of a house where nobody's chair had been moved in 14 months. I hadn't given the dog a name yet, either. 3 months in, and some small, stubborn part of me had decided that naming him was the same as admitting he was staying, and admitting he was staying felt, for reasons I couldn't fully explain to my sister on the phone, like giving up a chair I wasn't ready to give up. I didn't fix anything that night. I went to bed. I got up the next day and ate standing at the counter, same as always. But the following afternoon, at 5:40, I did something different. I didn't try to distract him or move his dinner or leave any doors open. I just walked over and sat down on the floor next to him, my back against the same door he was watching, and stayed there until it got dark and he finally gave up and went to lie down. Except this time, he stopped in the hallway first, turned around, and pressed his head against my knee for exactly as long as it takes to not really be an accident. I started doing it every day after that, not to stop him from waiting. I'd figured out by then that you can't rush a dog out of grief any more than you can rush a person out of it. You can only stop letting it wait alone. 6 weeks into that new habit, on an ordinary Thursday, 5:45 came and the dog didn't go to the door. He got up the way he always did. I braced for it out of pure reflex. But instead of crossing to the door, he walked to the leash hanging on its hook by the hallway closet, the one I'd bought and barely used, looked at it, then looked back at me, sitting on the floor where I always sat now. He wasn't waiting anymore. He was asking. We went for a walk at 5:45 that day, the first time either of us had done anything but sit at that hour in 6 weeks. He didn't run this time. He just walked, close enough that his shoulder kept brushing my leg, all the way to the end of the block and back, unhurried, like someone taking the long way home on purpose, because he finally had somewhere he wanted to be. I'm not going to tell you I'm fixed. I don't think that's how any of this works, for a dog or for the rest of us. But that night, for the first time in 14 months, I opened her side of the closet on purpose and moved her shoes, not away, but just over a few inches, enough room for a leash and a worn tennis ball and a water bowl that had started, sometime in the last 6 weeks, to live by the front door instead of the kitchen. I named him that weekend. Cooper, my sister's suggestion, though I don't remember either of us explaining why. Giving him a name finally felt less like giving something up and more like admitting out loud that we were both staying. He still goes to the door most days around 5:40. I don't think that ever fully goes away, and I've stopped wanting it to. I just make sure now that whoever he's still watching for, and whoever I still am, some days, without meaning to be, neither one of us has to do it alone. The microwave clock still says 5:45 sometimes when I happen to glance at it while it's cooking something else entirely. I don't look away from it anymore. If you believe the world still needs stories about kindness, hope, second chance, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things, welcome home. Subscribe to Bekalia Studios, and let's keep these stories alive together.